EOD Staff Sergeant Sam Sharma for tonight's ceremonial puck drop.
There is so much to this. Let's break it down. First, wrote one outlet. Instead of having a human drop the puck, a bomb disposal robot from the 55th Explosive Ordnance Disposal Company did the duties using its mechanical arm. From a few feet away, an officer from the group wearing a blast suit made the moment happen using a remote control that was stationed on his hand. Now, from the Link newspaper, the American sports are so steeped in nationalist propaganda that the mere notion of not playing a national anthem before a game between two American teams on American soil is cause to be publicly chastised. God forbid we forget where this game is being played. Howard Bryant, who debunked Stephen A. Smith when it came to the workout waiver as it pertained to Colin Kaepernick.
How was the waiver that the NFL gave to Kaepernick different from what they would have given to any other free agent walking into tryout?
Well, because it had a certain clause in it that said you cannot take any action for anything that takes place inside of the grounds, and not just injury. This document said that you cannot take any action about anything, any and all actions that occur. And what they're really talking about is what happens after Colin works out. Suppose he sits down with the NFL, with a team, any given team, and that team asks you, if we sign you, do you plan on kneeling? And if you say, and if Colin Kaepernick said, yes, I plan on kneeling, and then suddenly he doesn't get signed, then he has waived his right to take any action as a collusion lawsuit, because right then and there, that question is collusive.
Has written extensively on the intersection of sports and politics. And what we saw with the Hershey Bears, well, he has written about it for quite some time. Our North Star for this story and many, many more that has come after it is 9/11. All right. The spectacles, the police, the military, placement in stadiums, arenas, etc. around the country, it creates a boom for the sports industrial complex. He writes, sports continue to impose the 9/11 template on a shifting culture. Military Appreciation Night sent one message in 2001, but quite another in the time of this piece being written, 2020. The Army has provided vehicles and combat equipment to local police departments, ostensibly to use against American citizens. Remember?
Fired at, gassed, and shoved. On June 1st, President Trump threatened military action to quell unrest that has spread since the killing of George Floyd, a black man in police custody. As he spoke, a remarkable scene unfolded outside the White House. Police in riot gear fired gas canisters and used grenades containing rubber pellets to scatter largely peaceful demonstrators. Their actions cleared the way for the president to cross Lafayette Square Park and walk to the historic St. John's Church for a photo op.
Bryant continues for ESPN.com. Sports remain a visual extension of 9/11. 20 years of sports viscerally shaped by geopolitics. The Padres and their desert camo jerseys, American flags affixed to the backboards of NBA games, still there, player jerseys and referee uniforms, images of the military, the flags, the flyovers, and police dominating the ritualistic feel of sports. International war and its accompanying stages is all this generation has known, and it remains to this day. The Hershey Bears, meanwhile, are wearing camo uniforms, but hypocritically, this is the same exact sport which said, we don't want our politics mixing with sports. So you know what we should do? We should eliminate Pride Night, when players would have, for warm-ups only, a rainbow on their sticks. Maybe part of their number on their jersey had a rainbow on it. But that was too much. Military Appreciation Night, a visual representation of war, of the same sort of equipment that has been used to kill predominantly brown people In other parts of the world, we're okay with it because that's America, man. There is no better hypocrisy than this right here. I'll add more. First from Brian. Obedience has been a defining characteristic of the post 9/11 years, where the cultural messaging to black players and citizens alike has been to uphold the flag, which is a stand-in for upholding the military, and police, which is a stand-in for upholding America, which is a stand-in for upholding whiteness. Even though black, brown, and Asian soldiers comprise nearly half of the Army's enlisted ranks. That number is as of 2020. He concludes, the rituals have run their course. The overwhelming majority of the post 9/11 years in sports did not bring healing, but rather an even greater presence of police force at home and an increased sense of militarization and revenge toward the world. 1,000% true. The chants of USA, USA may have been cathartic, but they were also menacing. The chorus to President Bush telling the world during his November 6, 2001 address to Congress announcing the war on terror, quote, "You're either with us or against us." It is fashionable for fans to say they do not want politics in their sports, but for nearly 2 decades, American sporting events have perfected selling the politics of war. Again, 1,000% true, because that is what they are doing each and every time they have these displays. And they're doing it whether you like it or not. The sports leagues and teams are partners to all of this. He'd go on, as much as the post-George Floyd protests were a response to what occurred in Minneapolis, they're also a final rejection of the police hero narrative that American sports have sold to the public. Police violence has increased. And in a world of viral videos, so has its visibility. But accountability for it has not. It is time for a long overdue recalibration. It's over now. When fans return, the primary messaging they receive at ballparks across America should no longer be about flags and flyovers. It is where we are. One person who has dissented to this very strongly is a veteran named William J. Astor. I reached out to him for comment. I'm waiting to hear back. These days, he writes, you can hardly miss moments when, for instance, playing fields are covered with gigantic American flags, often unfurled and held either by scores of military personnel or civilian defense contractors. Such ceremonies are invariably touted as natural expressions of patriotism, part of a continual public expression of gratitude for America's warfighters and heroes. Again, Astor, a veteran, would write, when I watched this year's version of the game, however, I didn't relive my youth. I relived my military career, as the start the previous night of the MLB All-Star game featured a televised home run derby. Before it began, about 50 airmen paraded out in camo uniforms. He would then speak with Howard Bryant, and that was courtesy of WBUR. I think at first there's a sort of thrilling feeling. I'm like, all the other fans, a big plane goes overhead. Oh my gosh, wow, we're in awe, we're inspired, right? But at the same time, to me, it's not something that I see should be flying over a sports stadium before a game. You know, they are weapons of death. They may be required, but they certainly shouldn't be celebrated and applauded. And on the topic of former Arizona Senators Jeff Flake and John McCain exposing the paid patriotism model, where the United States government, the Department of Defense, and the NFL all teamed up for these surprises where a cheerleader or a family will then see their loved one coming back from overseas and everyone applauds and goes crazy for it. He would say, Astor, patriotic displays, they mean a lot more to me when they are spontaneous. But to learn that these have been paid for, that corporate teams owned by the 1% billionaires, basically were collecting money from the military, paid for obviously by you and me, by the American taxpayer, well, it was sad. He then goes on to say this. Under the Bush-Cheney administration, we weren't even able to see the caskets of dead soldiers. The cost of war, that very ugly face of war, was being kept from us. And the only time we see it sometimes is when they bring out a wounded soldier, for example, and maybe he or she has lost a limb or two, but they're brought out into an NFL stadium or a Major League Baseball game. And the impression that you get is everything's okay, see? But we don't see this person struggling to get around at home and maybe being depressed because they've suffered this horrible wound in war. That is 1,000,000% on the money because we don't see it. We have no idea what goes on behind the scenes. All we see is, see, this person made a sacrifice, and now we get to celebrate them for that moment in time at a hockey game. We get to celebrate them. So they get a round of applause and free tickets. And maybe even, probably not, but maybe even a ride to the game because they served our country. That is not what it's about. That should never be what it's about. But in the post-9/11 world, where we have militarized the sports industrial complex to continue parading these figures out to represent something that it simply, to many, doesn't, is a contrarian take that they are doing for profit, and it is beyond belief, the lack of a moral compass that takes place. And this is routine. It happens over and over and over again. It's sickening. So when I see the Hershey Bears, no knock on the PA announcer, no knock on the players, but when I see a team do that, or I see the Los Angeles Rams do it, or the Chicago Blackhawks do it, it's time to look into it and really take a harsher stance on what they are selling us and also potentially the dollars that are being exchanged behind closed doors for these moments. If you can and are willing, please become a paid member here at TYT Sports and or go to tyt.com/join. In addition, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Appreciate it. Have a great day.